A wonderful, wonderful man named East Spetter, Matthew East Spetter, a man from Holland. And thing I remember him is wearing short sleeve shirt and a big tattoo of numbers down his arm. And he never spoke of them, but he spoke of looking ahead, and that things can be better, but you've got to make them better, and that type of thing. And that really stuck with me. After I was asked to run for the directorship of the National Congress of American Indians, which is it's the largest, oldest national intertribal organization in the country. And at that time, they elected the executive director, and I won the election, served pretty much through the 1970s, which were really wonderful times. They were challenging times, but an awful lot was done. It was I think, the most productive time for Indians in Washington in many, many years.
In the fall of '49, I entered Bryn Mawr College by accident. And when I got there and looked around and found that everybody looked alike, I was horrified. My first speech was about what I did last summer, mostly describing the makeup of the student body at the Encampment for Citizenship. And that was a little bit of an eye-opener for the professor and for my fellow students. And I talked about how disappointed I was and how disgusted I was to find that there were no Negroes at Bryn Mawr College. And at the end of that speech, the professor said, "Miss Lindau, I think you need to talk to the dean." I happily went to talk to the dean, who had been forewarned that I was difficult. And the first thing she said to me was, and I had learned at the encampment that this would be the first thing she would say, "We would love to have Negroes, but they don't apply." I pulled out of my pocket the names, addresses, and phone numbers of the Negro Student Fund and the National Scholarship Service and Fund for Negro Students, two organizations I had learned about at the encampment. And their mission was to help all white schools recruit Negroes.
I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, which was a segregated community. When I say Kansas, people think of John Brown and everything was very open. But Kansas City, Kansas schools were all segregated. So I went to segregated schools from kindergarten through high school. So to arrive in Berkeley at the encampment and suddenly being able to interact with people of all ethnicities, all races, all religions, all culture was really a shock. And I just found it to be the most exciting 6 weeks that I'd spent in my life, because it really had a bearing on everything I did and relationships that I had. And I started out as a teacher, and I was very active in the teachers union in Los Angeles. And for 8 years, I was an officer of United Teachers Los Angeles. Got arrested for a teacher strike. So really the encampment just had a great impact on my life. Basically the things that I did, the students I taught, the activism that I was included in. So I just always use that as something that really helped me enhance my life. Sorry to get emotional, but I've always said that to myself. I think I'm a better person for being the Indian encampment, because it really gave me the opportunity to know that everybody is everybody. It really doesn't make any difference about your ethnicity, your religion, your income.
Encampment made it happen. We built a democracy. We lived a democracy, and we talked about issues that are not talked about in schools, even less today than they were then.
And I always remember Nanny Politzer saying, one person can do something. Don't be overwhelmed. If you see something, before it became a cliche, say, do something. I always had the encampment spirit as part of my motivation, or not my motivation, my way of acting, that if the room was silent and there had to be a protest, I did not feel inhibited, and I could hear the echoes from the encampment saying, somebody has to speak up. And I am indebted eternally. Life changed dramatically when I produced a prison drama called Fortune in Men's Eyes, which led literally on stage to the creation of the Fortune Society. My life was shaped greatly by my 6 weeks at Fieldston. We had in our dorm room, we had farm kids from Montana, black and white kids from the South, but I treasured a son of a Indian leader from New Mexico, and I remember spending a long weekend as guest of the tribe because I was the friend of the son of the chief. And I mean, who ends up in an Indian reservation and with Native Americans and learning and appreciating their culture?
I was very impressed by the fact that a Black professor came and told us his work and his contribution to the Supreme Court decision. And I thought to myself, now here's this professor talking to us as young students, and he's using his expertise to help his people. And I thought to myself, well, that's important for me to know. And it was very encouraging and inspiring. And I was already on my path of working to understand more about Indian history and culture, because we didn't have any of that in our schools. And I knew that I didn't know much, but that I wanted to assist in some way with advancement of American Indians. I ended up being the first woman chair of my tribe, the Menominee tribe. I ended up being the first woman assistant secretary of Indian Affairs in the Department of Interior in the Clinton administration. And so the encampment experience was a very foundational experience for me. There's a lot of power that you can use in those positions. So in one stroke of my pen, I doubled the number of federally recognized tribes in this country.
I've now been a consultant. I work with Margot and Jane Sapp and Michael Carter on the curriculum for the summer group. So this is a long, lifelong connection to the encampment, often inspired by Ani Weiss, who kept saying, you should just keep connected. And I've always loved this connection and this way of being with young people.
I attended Berkeley in 1959 as a 17-year-old and was in Ohio at the time, born and raised in Cleveland Heights, and lived in Southern Ohio at that time. And my mom thought it would be a good idea for me to get away from Southern Ohio and get exposed to something broader. And the encampment certainly did that. Exposed me in many ways to different geography, different people, different backgrounds. And I've been a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, and I'm now president of the fellowship here in Marin County in San Rafael, and have been. So always had a bent to be active in social justice kinds of things and liberal religion kinds of things. But I spent my career as a city and county manager. So I worked in 5 different states, Columbia, Maryland, and Salem, Oregon, and ended up here in California and managed both counties and cities, and thoroughly enjoyed that. Brought an entrepreneurial spirit to the way government should be operated, and made governments far less bureaucratic and more responsive, and more just in many ways. And I credit that to the encampment background.
It was also my first time to interact with people of color as peers and confidants. It was the first time for me to understand how news and current events intersect our daily lives, which became the foundation for later activism. And for me personally, I learned that we're not individuals living this privileged life, but we are part of a network that is woven and strengthened as we live and work together. I will always be grateful because the encampment really changed my life and changed the direction in which my life has carried me now.
Well, fundamental part of my existence. But I've been very involved all my life in at various levels of community organization and action. And I have children and grandchildren who are very involved in the world of social justice.